Hi everybody, welcome to this op5 webinar at the doorstep of op5 Monitor. My name is Danielle and I'll be moderating this webinar today, so a very warm welcome to all of our participants. Before we get started, let me just run through some things that are good to know. We have a chat available to all attendees, so feel free to ask questions or make comments at any time during the webinar. There will be a short Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so we can tackle your questions then. The webinar is also being recorded. The recording and the presentation deck will be made public and sent out to you in a few days. Okay, let me introduce the host of this webinar, Joel from our amazing professional services team. Welcome, Joel. Great to have you here today.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Joel will be guiding you through all the great features of op5 Monitor with a live system demo. So take it away, Joel.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay, so a quick introduction. First, the agenda for today. We will look at op5 Monitor, our main product. Give you a quick overview of the basic features and how you can utilize it in your organization. So the agenda for today, we will do this live demo. We will have a quick summary of what we saw. And the next step is up to you guys for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat or, so we can take that later. Jump into it. So op5, who are we? Well, we are a Swedish software company. We've been doing open source monitoring now for a little over 10 years. And our main focus is server and network monitoring. So we provide a supported solution to monitor your network and infrastructure, and we also provide some professional services to help you get started and customize the environment for your needs. All right then, let's get started with the demo, shall we? So let me just share the desktop for a moment here. All right, verified to see that. All good. All right, so this is our demo system. If you like what you see in this demo and want to give it a try, you can just go back.
Just a moment. Looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with the screen sharing.
Yes. One moment, please.
All right, let's try this again.
Nice. All right. Sorry for that. We had some technical issues. All right. So once you log into op5 Monitor, you will be greeted with this tactical overview. I like to see this as a nice landing page, a good spot to start your day. This tactical overview can be customized to show information that's relevant to you. So depending on your role in the organization, you can show more technical and in-depth data or a bit more of an overview. So for example, in my tactical overview, I've selected to use this business services widget, which shows a nice high-level overview of our different business processes and applications. I will dig into that a little bit more later. I've also chosen to show some detailed information for servers that I care really much about, so my database servers down here. And I can also have a quick overview of unhandled problems. So if it's anything I really need to dig into and look at what's wrong. So I can tell here by the network health widget that we're experiencing some issues in our network environment now. So someone better take a look at that. Depending on your setup or how your administrator chooses to manage this, you might be greeted with the host wizard instead. And this is a neat tool that we built to get you quickly started with monitoring. So once you log into your systems, you might be greeted with this screen where you can easily add monitoring for a few different devices like generic Linux servers or your HP ProCurve switches. So this is a nice way to get started. You can also see that I choose to have some visualizations here with a nice map of my servers. And I also had this Google Maps thing here, which is the geo map where I can place my infrastructure. And right now it seems like we're having some issues with the link from our German office and Swedish office. But enough about that. Let's jump into the monitoring, shall we? So, as most network-based monitoring systems, our layout is built on top of hosts and services. So, let's take a look at that, shall we? So, we have a few different servers here in our demo environment. And if you see anything you like, and if you want to dig in later, you can just log into our demo environment, demo@op5.com, and play around yourself as a limited user. But let's look at a typical host, shall we? So we have a few VMware hosts here. If we click on the host, we get taken to a status overview where we can see some detailed information for the host, which node in our monitoring cluster is currently monitoring, some response time stats and such. But this is fairly ordinary, so let's look at our monitored services instead. So in this view, we can see, we can dig into the server and see more detailed information. So we have hardware status, which can be quite useful. So you get notified if any fans starting to fail on you, or if memory turns bad, or if you need to replace any disk. But also some more high-level information like, I don't know, CPU usage or ping response times. So this can be quite nice. So if you want to dig it down even further, you can either go in and see historic data for the service. So I can see the CPU usage over time. This sort of information can, of course, be aggregated. So if you want to compare your different VMware server CPU utilization to rebalance some clustering, or just see a temperature overview in your server room to determine where you need to install new cooling towers and such. You can also see who is supposed to get contacted if anything goes bad, and if anything has gone bad, you can see comments for this device. I can also dig down into some alert history if I want to get a detailed overview. It can take a few seconds to load. And I can see over time how this particular service and host has, how the status has been, and if I can see any patterns. I can of course choose to filter this and compare it with other hosts as well. This is a VMware server, and it's fairly common in most infrastructures. But op5 Monitor is a very pluggable and flexible monitoring system. So if you can think of a use case or a device that you need to monitor, chances are great that we either bundle a monitoring plugin to check that, or you can use any of the thousands available Nagios compatible monitoring plugins. So, as I said, this is a VMware host, but it could also be something like a network switch, or in our case, we have some environment probes as well. We monitor our office plants, so we can keep an eye on if we need to moisture them or put some water in them, and how the battery is and the sensors and such. So, as you can tell, this isn't limited to servers per se. That's our main focus area. So, once you gather all this information, you probably want to do some stuff with it. Of course, you can get notifications and set thresholds for when to get alerts, but you can also do some pretty other neat stuff with the monitoring data you collect. So let's look at a few visualizations you can build with op5 Monitor. So we're into this monitoring menu, and I go down to Nagvis. So Nagvis, it's our main visualization engine, and it's really a good way to put the monitoring data in context. So, for example, I have this view called My Company, and it's just a picture that I've drawn up in Paint or Photoshop and uploaded to Monitor, and then I can place these interactive icons on top of it, so I can see that my internal databases in the database group is doing fine, but Amazon seems to be experiencing some issues, and I can also tell that one of my suppliers haven't been handling things all that well. So let's jump into this and see what it is. Okay. So this is one of the temperature probes at offices. So we use this to monitor our own data center. So right now we can see that it's okay. It just turned all right, but we seem to have been experiencing some temperature issues. So we better have someone take a look at that, or at least call our supplier. I have a few other examples here as well. We have the AlphaMap, which is a Nagvis visualization that you don't need to manage yourself, but it's rather built up with the parent-child relationship. So chances are, if you have ever handled any IT monitoring system, you have issues with alert fatigue, and you have issues when essential systems like routers or switches goes down. So imagine a scenario where one of your core switches in the data center goes down. Well, chances are that your monitoring system won't be able to reach those hosts. So rather than sending out thousands of alerts, we have this system with parent-child, so you can tell them that, oh, you will probably not be able to reach this host if this other host goes down. So here, for example, we see that we rely on Google Apps for our mail server. We can see that this host is currently in a blocked state since Google Apps is experiencing some issues. So this is a really neat way to handle alert fatigue. I can also show another visualization that we have built. Nothing too special, but a good example overview. So this is for an imaginary airport of ours, where we can see the status of our check-in desks. So this could be a good way for people working in a support desk or help desk. And if you have some on-duty personnel, they could have this screen on a nice big television in the office, and once it starts to beep, they can get a quick overview and determine what's wrong with the infrastructure. So this is quite neat. Or you can build a simpler overview similar to the GeoMap, where you basically display the link usage on your different WAN links across your offices. So this is quite neat. But visualizations are one thing, but sometimes it's useful to dig into reports as well. So based on the status data, you can generate some pretty neat reports to show you how your infrastructure has been doing over time. So let's have a look at our databases. As you see in this menu, we provide a few different reports, but I will cover the most essential ones. This takes a few seconds to generate, but once you have generated the report, you can see that this is a breakdown of a service group of ours, and it's basically how our database servers and the different services have been performing during the last 24 hours. So if you experience an outage and you've determined the root cause afterwards, it might be useful to go back and see how much downtime you experienced. So in this case, you can see that it's pretty damn green. We seem to have done a great job with our database servers. So this is a timeline where you can follow different times, and if there ever is an issue, you can see it blip on the map, and you can tell for how long the issues occurred. Down below, we also get a breakdown of the different services we include in this report, and all looks quite green. We also get some graphs as well, but as you can probably tell by the status, not much exciting stuff here. But let's look at another report if we can include some more detailed information. So let's look at the availability report for our network interface checks. And this doesn't paint such a pretty picture. So this has been a report for the last 7 days. And the timeline doesn't look quite as good. So we've been replacing some switches in our lab, and you can really see that the result wasn't too successful. So on this map we can see that green, 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 and then a lot of red. So this can be a good way to determine a root cause as well if you've experienced or are experiencing something in the environment. So at the customer of ours last month, they experienced large issues in their production environment, and they couldn't really tell the root cause. But once we generated the report for the last 24 hours, we could see that at the same time all systems were affected from a particular provider. And it turns out that they had some issues with the firewall that we were going through with all our traffic. So this can be a great way to find issues. Down below we can see a breakdown of different types of service states, and well, not so nice pie chart displaying that we have 54% of critical service during this period. We also have an interface report. Alright, so these are availability reports, but in some cases it can be quite useful to have an SLA report as well, especially if you're responsible for some infrastructure that you need to provide a status report on, or if you rely on some third-party providers. So let's look at the SLA report called SaaS Providers last 6 months and have a look at that. So since we're going through some historic data, this can take quite a while to generate, but it seems to be going quite well. We can see that in October they held our SLA 98.62% up, 99 in November and December. So they've started to get much better, but in September they had some real issues, so 95%. And here we see that the bar is red, and that means that they crossed our threshold limits. And these can of course be configured depending on your different needs. If we scroll down, we can see our SLA acceptable limit, which is the same for all these months, but we can see that it was also breached during September, and the different services, of course. Generating these reports in Monitor is quite easy, and getting them out of Monitor is even easier. Just press either this PDF button to export it as a portable PDF. You can export it as a CSV if you want to do some Excel magic on it, or set it as a scheduled report to be sent out by email each month to key personnel in your organization. If you have more of a data center or data warehouse solution, you could use our report API as well. So if you need to do some more serious crunching, it's definitely available for extraction. The last report I will cover today is just a very basic report, an alert summary, but to be frank, this is my favorite because it really gives a quick overview of the situation. So, top alert producers. The name is quite self-explanatory, but it's basically which services and hosts has generated the most alerts during a specified time period. So here I've configured for the last 7 days, and this is a really neat report to put on a Monday meeting when you sit down with your group. In this case, which type of issues you should handle during the week. So we can see that we have some read issues on our Amazon EC2 machines. So we better take a look at that. But in reality, and it often is more an issue of trimming alert threshold. So perhaps this is an issue, perhaps it's not. I can dig into the service detail from this report. I can see over time how it has been performing, and I can see it looks like fairly small peaks. So maybe it's just and a matter of tweaking the thresholds a bit. This is another quite interesting feature of Monitor, which I noticed down here. It's called flap detection. And it's basically if a service changes state really often in case of an I/O error, for example, you don't get send hundreds of notifications. You get send one, maybe two, and then you get a notification telling you that the service is flapping. I will let you know once it recovers. So, quite a neat features. Well, in the report we looked at, we dug into services and hosts. Quite detailed stuff, but it might not show the whole picture. So to solve that issue, we created something called business services. So a quick overview before we dig into this. As most of you guys probably know, today's IT is not as simple as a server goes down and your business stops making money. Because we put a lot of effort and a lot of money into building redundancy. We set up multiple internet connections to handle our traffic. And when we bring a report to our boss, we might not want to explain that this downtime doesn't matter because we set up database clustering or whatever it might be. So therefore, we created something called business services. And in business services, everything revolves around a business object instead of a service or a host. So let's expand our web shop example. So on this object, we have set a rule that says that if any of the child objects are critical, this whole object will turn critical. So fairly straightforward. So if we would take a report on this object right now, it would say it's in a critical state. And why is it in a critical state? Well, it's because one of the child components, this simulation of customer experience, is red. But let's dig into these child objects instead, just to explain. So I have a group called database cluster, and that group includes two different hosts. So I have my MySQL 1 Stockholm, and I have MySQL 2 Gothenburg. So what this best state rule means is that if any of these objects is okay, then this whole group will be okay. So this best and worst state are quite simple rules, but if you want to, you can set up other more complicated scenarios as well, where you determine a certain level of percentage levels of servers that needs to be okay. So if you have a VMware cluster, then maybe it's acceptable to lose 2 or 3 of your servers, but not 60% of them. The rules look quite the same for web servers. In this scenario, on the other hand, we have some experience some issues on the Gothenburg server, but it doesn't seem to matter because the one in Stockholm is still okay. But our web shop object is of course in critical mode, and that is because several of our end user simulations fail. So let's expand shopping cart, for example. Well, these are test cases built with something called WebInject, and we also have extensions to support third-party solution Selenium as well. But this is basically a good way to simulate end-user experience. So here we have a program that tries to log into the web shop and redeem a coupon code. And that might be all fine, and our server monitoring might not detect any issues with servers, or at least nothing we can't handle with our redundancy. But still, the shopping experience fails, or at least fails the criteria to be considered okay. And therefore, the whole web shop object will be in critical state. So this can be utilized in a few different ways, either in reports, as I said, if you want to give a high-level overview, and this can also be a quite nice way to justify a big investment in redundant infrastructure, because you can afterwards show your results. But it can also be a good way to alert, for example, the database administrator. So let's say we don't want to wake up the guy on duty in the middle of the night just because one of the nodes in the cluster goes down. Well, now we can say, okay, wake him if 20% of them goes down or 30%. He better take a look at that before anything else happens. All right. This is just scratching the surface of Monitor. You can, of course, do a lot of more in-depth stuff and really get into it. We support log monitoring with syslog or Windows event logs. We support handling SNMP traps and a lot of stuff like that. But to learn these sort of things, it's better to just play around yourself or get in contact with one of our tech guys to give you a more personalized demo. So that's all for the live demo. Let me return back to our presentation software. Stop screen sharing. There we go. Right, let me get up the presentation. Share slides. All right. So, a quick summary. We looked at the tactical overview, our new homepage, our workbench. We dug into some hosts and services, looked how that could be configured for our VMware machine and our environment probes here with the office plants. We looked at some business service management with the web shop example and some visualization with the NAGVIS maps. And of course our availability and SLA reports. So, if you want to learn more about op5 Monitor, you could visit our knowledge base at kb.op5.com. It's a great place where you can find how-tos, you can find the official manual, and just neat tips how to get down with your monitoring. You can also contact the sales representative of ours if you want to get a more personalized demo.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joel. Now, we haven't really gotten any questions over the course of the webinar, but I actually put a lot of thought into it, and I had a question for you, Joel. What would you say that right now is your favorite feature in the current version of op5 Monitor?
Well, besides the flexibility, one of the neat things in the new version of Monitor is our updated Windows agent. And if you come from the open source monitoring world, you might be very familiar with Linux and such, but the new monitoring agent is really useful and it contains a lot of features out of the box to almost solve any Windows monitoring issue. So I would say that the updated the agent is one of my favorite features right now, at least as a consultant.
That sounds good. All right, great. Now, we haven't really gotten any other questions, but feel free to drop us a line. If you're wondering about anything, just get in touch. You can either email to the info@op5.com, or if you want to get in touch with one of the sales representatives to get a personalized demo, or if you have really in-depth questions, you can email inside-sales@op5.com, or go to the website and just click on Contact Us, and you'll get through to us and ask us any questions you may have.
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Joel.
Yeah.
This is Joel's last webinar, so everyone can say goodbye to Joel. We'll be with him.
Goodbye. It's been a nice ride. Hope to see you all in the future.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.